My name is Lindsey Gulden. I'm a climate scientist and a data scientist who spent over 10 years working for ExxonMobil before I was fired for reporting a $10 billion fraud. In my last role at ExxonMobil, I led a top-notch team of data scientists and software engineers. We used our skills to help groups across the corporation. I enjoyed my job, and I was good at my job. At the time I was fired, my team was helping the Delaware asset team to make their operations more efficient. The Delaware is an unconventional oil and gas development in New Mexico and Texas. Unconventional assets are effectively well factories. Their profitability depends on the efficiency with which the operators can drill, frack, and produce hundreds or even thousands of wells. Real improvements in logistics lead to real increases in asset value, simply because getting oil to market sooner is more valuable than getting oil to market later. My team was developing tools to improve those logistics. To make sure we fully understood the process that we would optimize, my colleague Damien Burch was embedded as a development planner on the Delaware team. He and other development planners assembled and annually adjusted the schedule governing the extraction of the Delaware oil and gas. Damien and I had front row seats to see ExxonMobil management deliberately inflate the reported value of the Delaware. Because the Delaware had been talked up as the most valuable asset in the corporation, and because the CEO had been boasting to Wall Street about future production, there was huge pressure to make the asset seem as valuable as possible. Executives were able to make it seem as if the Delaware would be worth $10 billion more than they actually knew it to be by manipulating a hidden assumption in the planning process known as the drilling learning curve, which specified the rate at which drilling speeds would get faster year over year. The ruse was simple. Ever-increasing drilling speeds would greatly accelerate development, increasing the reported asset value. Against the advice of subject matter experts, management insisted on using a drilling learning curve that was so wildly optimistic that the drillers themselves called it physically impossible. But because the assumption would not be made public, there would be no way for outsiders to figure out that the asset value was substantially overstated. So, to recap, ExxonMobil executives appeared to be cooking the books to the tune of $10 billion. Damien and I were two of about 200 people who knew about the fraud. To my knowledge, we were the only two who reported the fraud internally. We were told it was definitely a serious problem and that corrective action would be taken. In time, some details of the fraud became public. The publicity sparked increased scrutiny and a class action lawsuit on behalf of the shareholders. Rather than police itself and correct the fraud, ExxonMobil fired the whistleblowers. Damien and I were terminated by our respective company vice presidents, whose only shared manager was Darren Woods, who remains the CEO. We were fired right before a major layoff. Executives had an easy way to get rid of us with no strings attached, but instead, they chose to make an example of us. After this happened, my colleagues were shocked. More than one person advised me to let it go and move on. But in part of where I was before I joined ExxonMobil, I didn't agree. After earning a doctorate in climate science in 2009, I joined ExxonMobil at a time when its public position on climate change had undergone a major shift. Then CEO Rex Tillerson had performed what appeared to be an about-face from his predecessor. Tillerson and other company leaders stated that human-caused climate change was a real and serious problem, and that ExxonMobil was going to be part of the solution. Perhaps willfully blinded by the paycheck, I believed them. Most rank and file with whom I worked agreed that climate change must be urgently addressed. But as the years wore on, I started to question, not vigorously enough in retrospect, upper management's actual degree of commitment to fight climate change. Against that backdrop, I considered my situation. $10 billion may sound like a lot of money, and it is, but it's not a bankrupting amount of money for ExxonMobil. If executives were willing to flagrantly violate multiple laws over a measly $10 billion, why on earth would they be honest when it came to climate change, which poses an existential threat to their traditional business? Given the huge power that ExxonMobil has over society, via its influence across all branches of government and both major political parties, via its funding of university research, via its multi-million-dollar PR budgets that shape public opinion, whether ExxonMobil is an honest broker for the climate is fundamentally important to our future. It matters. I realized that if I didn't stand up, I would be complicit in further empowering company executives to ignore inconvenient laws in the public interest. Thanks to the support of the National Whistleblower Center and our attorney, Neil Henriksen, Damien and I filed a complaint with the Department of Labor. After a thorough investigation, the department found probable cause that ExxonMobil had violated Sarbanes Oxley in our firing. They ordered ExxonMobil grant us preliminary reinstatement. ExxonMobil has continued to pursue what I would describe as a strategy of delay of justice in order to ensure denial of justice. But we're patient. We'll continue to press the case for as long as it takes. I want to step back and acknowledge why I was able to stand up to ExxonMobil. First and foremost, the U.S. has whistleblower protections codified into law because of the tireless efforts of public servants such as Senators Grassley and Wyden. Those whistleblower protections have continued to expand, in large part because of the vigorous advocacy of the NWC. Talented attorneys, such as Mr. Henriksen, use their formidable skill to ensure corporate accountability. Thanks to all of these people, I have been able to speak truth to power. I am unique, but not for the reason that many seem to think. Since going public with my experience, I've been repeatedly called uniquely brave by well-meaning people. Although I'm grateful for their kind words, I think an overemphasis on the personal characteristics of individual whistleblowers gives us as a society a pass. Bravery doesn't make me unique. Let me tell you what does. First, I am not one of 43 million Americans with student loan debt. Unlike 2/3 of Americans, I do not live paycheck to paycheck. I'm a US citizen. My presence here doesn't depend on the visa I hold through my employer. I have a spouse with good jobs and good benefits. I live in a state where even if we both lose our jobs, we can still get health insurance. My child attends a good public school. Unlike, say, a Boeing airplane mechanic, my job skills are transferable between industries. I live in a safe community with a strong civic fabric. I have a supportive network of family and friends. In short, I'm uniquely privileged in ways that make it possible for me to withstand a long fight with ExxonMobil. Robust, codified whistleblower laws are important and necessary, but they're not sufficient. Although it does take some courage to call out a corporation whose influence extends to every corner of society, even today in the United States, that said courage can only be practically exercised from a place of privilege. The highly unequal distribution of wealth and power in the American society makes it damn near impossible for most people to be able to successfully call out an abuse of power, even with whistleblower protections on the books. Rest assured that financially secure, community-supported, overeducated, minimally obligated, healthy 40-something white ladies living in safe Levy suburbs are not the only ones who witness abuses of power that threaten the integrity of our corporations, our government entities, and the public good. But we are members of a small group of people who have the privilege to stand up and demand that integrity, ethics, and the law be upheld. If a corporation's leaders can effectively choose the laws that they deign to obey, we've rendered our laws moot and our financial system brittle. If those executives can ignore a government order with impunity, as ExxonMobil has so far done, we've rendered our corporations more powerful than the government of the people for the people. If individual executives can use a corporation's vast wealth and influence as a shield to bypass laws and ethics without fear of reprisal, we've granted license to unethical actors to endanger our safety and security for their personal gain. This is not an academic exercise. We see direct effect of this lack of accountability today in the ongoing and largely successful efforts of big oil to use their immense power and influence to spread disinformation that systematically ensures society's failure to pivot away from fossil fuels and meaningfully tackle climate change. I ask that we expand our definition of whistleblower protection to include initiatives that ensure an equitable allocation of power and wealth. Ensuring prosperity and security for all makes it possible for people who witness unethical behavior to step up and defend the public interest. Investing in public education, that's a whistleblower protection. Eliminating non-compete agreements and ensuring collective bargaining power, whistleblower protections. Building out the social safety net and ensuring vigorous protection of the environment, both whistleblower protections. To maintain and attain in America, where rule of law is respected, corruption is scant, integrity and ethics rule the day, it must be possible for everybody to have the faith that they will be able to weather the inevitable storm that will arise when they speak truth to power. Shared prosperity and security benefit us all. They are the bedrocks of whistleblower protection. Thank you.